Okay, I got the thumbs up. We're good to go. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the very first Indie Bootcamp session of Develop 2024. Thank you very much for joining me. Last year was my first ever Develop, and now I'm here as a speaker, so dreams do come true. We've only got half an hour together today, so let's just jump right into it. My name is MJ Lewis, and over the course of my career thus far, I've helped bring more than 40 games to release on PC and console, most of which were indie games, and a good number of which were actually solo developers. And my position is in production, which is kind of a mysterious title, but production and publishing, that's where I come from, that's my background. My most recent role was as head of production at Firestoke. Our game Haunty released in May on all platforms, including Xbox Game Pass. If you haven't checked it out yet, I would encourage you to do so. It was given one of Rock Paper Shotgun's bestest bests and featured in The Guardian as well as the New York Times. I'm going to cover the session takeaways now, just in case someone stumbled in here by accident and wants to make a quick break for freedom. I can't see anything, so don't worry, I won't be judging you. We're going to be talking about publishing today, which can be a pretty controversial topic. Depending on who you speak to, a publishing deal might be the ultimate goal, or it might be something to be avoided on principle. Obviously, I have a biased perspective, but I'm not here to evangelize about publishing. What I'm hoping to do today instead is shine a light on some underestimated and often underappreciated aspects of bringing a game to release. Ultimately, there are a million different factors to take into consideration when you're thinking about bringing your game to market. So you should aim to make practical decisions that are right for you and your specific circumstances. Even most so-called solo developers actually have a bunch of help getting their game to release. Of course, that's not always the case. There are some people that do absolutely everything on their own, and more power to them. But you'll find the majority of famous or well-known solo developers actually have a load of people working on their games that help them come out and be as good as they are. So I'm going to help you figure out what the support you need, where to find the right people for the job, and more importantly than that, finish up with some tips that everybody can use regardless of the situation you're in. First of all, I want to give a caveat here, which I think is really important, and that is success is relative. I mentioned just now critical and commercial success, right? And some people make money from their games. Must be nice, right? It's awesome. And that is a kind of success. And under capitalism, obviously, it's usually one of the most obvious kinds of success. But it isn't the only one, and there are loads of different ways to be successful with making games. If making and iterating and refining your art is enough for you, then that is fantastic, and you shouldn't worry about critical or commercial success. However, I do know that there are lots of people in this room, budding game devs, who maybe want to make a living from making games, and so that's the audience I'm hoping to get for this talk. Releasing a game where I come from, releasing a game, the act of that itself, that's a huge success. That's my KPI, that's how I know I've done a good job. Is the game out? Can people buy it? And that doesn't sound like a big deal, right? But it is. And I'm going to talk a little bit today about why. So the first thing is, this is my area of expertise, right? This is production. And production in the publishing sense usually covers a mix of project, platform management, and cross-team coordination. We're keeping all the plates spinning. We're running around like headless chickens, trying to make sure that the QA team is talking to the localization team, is talking to the audio team, and that the dev team is actually rolling all of those changes into builds. Most devs start with PC platforms. Is there anybody here who's released a game on itch before? Quite a lot of hands. Good, thank you. Anyone on Steam? Fewer. Anyone on console? Very few, right? Thank you. Excellent. You've proved my point. Most game devs get a lot of their experience from PC platforms, from Steam, from itch. And on those platforms, it's pretty straightforward. It's pretty simple. You upload your build, you get it approved, you get a store page going, you set it for sale. People can interact with your product pretty immediately, within weeks of you getting started on the platform. And if all your experience comes from PC, then you would be forgiven for thinking that console platforms are pretty similar. But you would be very, very wrong. I'm sorry to break that to you, but instead of laboring the point about why consoles can be much more complex than PC, I figured I'd prepare some example platforms. None of these are real platforms, of course. I don't want to risk the wrath of any litigious corporations, but maybe you can read between the lines and figure out where I'm going with this. Platform A. is a beloved handheld and dockable console. It's one of the most appreciated and one of the most long-standing in the market. Almost everyone has one at home, and if you're thinking about releasing a game, odds are you've thought, man, I'd love to get my game on this console as well as on PC. Aside from the technical constraints that come with a console that's been around for a very long time, what's difficult about Platform A is actually the store page system. On Steam, the first thing you do is you set up your store page, you submit it for release, and within a couple of days, you can have that live, public-facing, no problem at all, no stress. But for Platform A, actually, you need to have your build approved before you can even begin submitting your store pages. So, good marketing practice tells you that you want your store page up as long as possible so it can get as many eyeballs as possible. But on Platform A, that isn't possible. And usually, you don't get your game build approved until not long before release. We're talking a handful of months before release. So if you are hoping to have your store page up sooner than that, you might be disappointed. In addition, the store pages are separated by region. So Steam is global. It's one button that goes to everybody. But for Platform A, you have 5 different regions, excluding China. And all of those pages need to be submitted separately, along with your release configurations, because the store pages contain your release configurations, your release date, your release time, things like that. So if one image asset is off spec and gets sent back to you, rejected by the platform, then you're going to be put back in the 10 minimum business days turnaround loop, and it could throw off your entire release. So if you're not expecting that, that could put a significant damper on your efforts. Next up, we have Platform B. Another beloved console, not handheld, but maybe you could get the idea. The thing that's difficult about Platform B is certification. And I mentioned certification a second ago, but I didn't really expand on it. And it's a confusing word. It's one of those words that I pretended I knew what it meant for a while before I actually did when I got into the industry. So I'll do you all the favor now. Certification is the process of submitting your game build to the platform you want to publish it on. And they take a look at it, and their internal QA team plays it, and they analyze it for functionality. So does this game do what it's supposed to? Is it crashing? Is it really slow? Are the loading times unbearable? And also compliance. So does this game comply with our platform-specific guidelines? Are they using our trademarks properly? Are they using our hardware in a way that's going to make sure the hardware is going to last as long as it's supposed to? But Platform B certification, you have to book slots in advance. And slots can book up pretty quickly in busy periods of the year. I'm talking February, March, and sort of summertime. So you could be waiting a couple of weeks before you can even get your build into certification. And at that point, if any issues are found that the platform deems MF or must fix, you have no choice but to go back, rebuild, submit a new build. And if you weren't expecting that and you haven't got a backup slot booked, you could be looking at weeks, even months, that you're going to be behind in your schedule. And if you're hoping for a simultaneous release and everything's coming together all at once, and this is the release date and you've announced it and you're locked in, having to change that at the last minute, it's a lot of work. And it's also really frustrating, especially if it can be avoided. And we've got, last but not least, Platform C, which is a lot like Console B in terms of user base and the kind of reasons you might be seeking to put your game on these platforms. Obviously, it's more work, but there are significant advantages to having your game on multiple platforms, depending on your genre. Platform A, maybe it's short form, roguelites and things like that. Platform B and C, maybe it's your bigger experiences, your longer form experiences. But the thing about Platform C is actually the setup. Platform C, you have to do everything sort of by email, person to person. There's not a lot of self-service stuff. And if you submit to them, you say, hey, I'd like to develop for your platform. Here's me, here's my company, here's the game we're making. It can take them 4 to 6 months to get back to you, just to get to you in the queue and say, hey, sure, no worries. Here's our GDK, here's our SDK, here's our documentation. Before that point, you will have absolutely no idea and no tools with which to be able to make your game for that platform. So if you're rocking up and thinking, hey, I'm going to get this game out in the next couple of months, no problem, I'll sign up, I'm sure it's fine. It may not be. So be prepared, talk to people who know what to do. And this all sounds like an awful lot, right? And I'm imagining it sounds pretty off-putting. It is a lot. I'm not going to lie about that. But it's not innately difficult. I can do it. So I have absolutely no doubt that you guys can do it too. It's just that when you're making a game, and if this is your game and you want your focus to be on the game itself, you are probably not going to have the time to worry about business deadlines and turnaround times and submissions and stuff like that, especially when you're in the period where you're hoping to, really lock down that 1.0 release build. This is a full-time job for a production manager such as myself for multiple months at a time, 40 hours a week or more, depending on how much of a disaster it is. It's not a matter of if things go wrong in terms of submissions, it's a matter of when, because there are so many variables and things that you cannot be prepared for, that having someone whose entire focus is production is going to be a huge help for anyone releasing a game. And so the next point is visibility and presence. Like you can read between the lines, right? This is marketing, but I am not an expert marketer, and I don't claim to be someone that should be giving marketing advice. If you're looking for marketing advice, I'd recommend checking out Annie's talk this afternoon, The Indie Marketer's Lament, because they know a lot more about the specifics of visibility than I do. That said, I've been around a lot of teams, worked closely with marketing teams while they've been doing this job. And let me tell you, it is not for the faint-hearted. Visual assets are a really important part of your game. As you know, store pages are more saturated now than they have ever been. Maybe 15 years ago, a handful of games came out a year on Steam, and now it's tens of thousands, and it's harder than ever to get the consumer's attention. So you're going to need key art that stands out and that represents your game in a way that you want your game to be represented. You're also going to need it in about 500 different formats, vertically, horizontally, with logo, without logo, JPEG, PNG, different color types. That's always fun. And then you're also going to need to store text. You're going to need it written in a way that makes people want to play your game. It could be the best game in the world, but if you've written a really boring write-up for it, or you don't understand exactly what it is about your game that makes people enjoy it, then it's not going to appeal to the people you want it to. So that's a huge time sink in and of itself. And then you've got media and influencer outreach. So you want people to talk about your game, right? And we want it to be streamers and influencers. You want it to be reviewed in magazines and things like that. But in order for that to happen, you generally have to reach out to 10 times more people than are actually ever going to get back to you. And you need to pitch them the game in the way that's going to make them think, hey, featuring this game is going to be good for me and my brand and our audience. Because there's a lot of competition these days. More and more indie devs, it's more approachable and it's more accessible, which is a good thing. But it also means that even smaller scale influencers and media outlets are swamped with game submissions. Please feature my game. Please talk about my game. I think you'd love it. So you need to be able to convince them in an email or even less that your game is worth playing. And that takes a lot of time. There's a lot of rejection, and you've got to know who to talk to as well. So those are all things to consider. And then there's communities. Indie games live and die by their communities. You know this. I know this. It makes a huge amount of difference if you've got an issue with the game you've played, or you've just played the game and you just finished and you thought, wow, I have to talk to someone about this. People join Discords and they want to talk to you as the developer. They want to talk to the team. They want to talk to other people that have worked on the game or played on the game. Maybe they're trying to find people to play together. And that community, if you put enough effort into it and you put enough love and attention into it and you're there speaking to people directly, the community will give that energy back to you. They will support you. And on days when you're not there, days like today where I'm out of the office, I'm not looking at Discord, I know that anywhere someone might be asking me a question, there's going to be people that are in that space. They're going to say, hey, I can help you out with that in my absence, and they're not getting paid. They're doing it because they feel they're a part of the community, the same as I am. And so if you put out, especially if you're putting out games and you're hoping to make a career out of it, building that kind of good faith is something that really, you can't put a price tag on that. And it's going to stand you in good stead across your career. So here are some visibility and presence prompts, some things for you to think about when you're thinking about releasing your game. Can you do these things yourself? Again, probably yes, except maybe with the exception of the visual appeal section. I myself, graphic design is not my passion, so maybe you need someone that can do that for you. It's a very wide spread here. There's a lot of creative stuff, and then there's a lot of people stuff, which again is not really my bag. So you should be considering seriously what help you need in this respect, because discoverability is probably the most important thing that you should be thinking about for your indie game in the market the way it is at the minute. It's one of the four horsemen of the indie apocalypse. So make sure you're doing everything to give your game the best chance of success in terms of visibility. And the third section is quality control. when you're making your game, you're going to come across limitations, whether that's in the engine or you just run out of time in Steam, or something is not achievable in the way that you thought it was. And every time that happens, you're going to be making a very small pivot in terms of getting away from the vision you had in the very first place. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's normal and natural. But how can you be sure once that's happening, and once that's been happening for months and years, that the game is still on track, that you're going to be able to walk away at the end of it and say, yes, I've created what I set out to create? In short, you're going to need people to play it. Whether that's at events like this, like Develop, where you rock up with a sturdy laptop and you have some folks break out controllers and sit down and enjoy it in the expo hall. Whether that's playtests through your Discord, because you've set up a fantastic community, right, already. So you're going to have loads of people in there that are excited to play the next version of your game. Or you probably have developer friends. And if you don't, I hope you're going to make some today or this week, because there is a certain level of advice that you can only get from people that understand the language you're speaking. They understand game design and understand what it's like to work with Unity or a specific GDK or a specific plugin. It's not because these people know more about your game. It's not because their opinion's more valuable. It's because they don't know anything about your game, right? They don't have a vested interest. They don't have any reason to like it other than, hey, this feels good, I'm enjoying it. And that's the energy that your audience, the masses are going to be bringing to your game once it's released. So getting a perspective on that before release, when you can actually affect change and make changes that benefit the game, is a really, really important thing. This is the only aspect of these 3 points that I really think cannot be done in total isolation. It's not foolproof, obviously. There's going to be suggestions that come up that are out of scope, or that you have absolutely no earthly idea how to implement, or that are just capital B bad. Believe me, I've heard them all. Well-meaning people with just the worst, the worst play feedback ever. But the important thing for you as a developer is knowing how to separate the bad feedback from the good feedback. Cherry pick the stuff that's going to benefit you and your game, because I've seen what happens when a good, well-meaning advice is ignored, and that advice inevitably comes back to haunt developers in the form of Steam reviews after release or just general media reviews. If you're hoping for critical commercial success, then what other people think matters. And obviously that's not the only kind of success, and it's not a must-have. There are plenty of people making games that don't care at all what other people think, and I think that's wonderful. And that's, we need that alongside the business side of things. Games are art. That's an established thing. But if you care about, sales numbers and you want people to play and like your game, get feedback as early as possible and start figuring out where the areas of friction are, and where maybe your vision is not being realized in the way that you hoped it would be. So hopefully now you've got a better understanding of some of the things it takes to release a game in the commercial market. It's a lot, yeah, but you can do it. And I'll hit you with this. You may well be able to do it without a publisher. You have plenty of options, and the market is more diverse than ever. But I'll quickly cover some things that a publisher can do, because it can be quite murky waters. A publisher generally has a staff full of people that know how to do the things I've just talked about. They have production teams, people like myself, who can do the dance with all console platforms and have that arcane knowledge stored away, and are just happy to be able to put it to good use. You have marketing teams who will be able to help you establish your brand and do influencer outreach and figure out what it is that is going to make people want to buy the game. And depending on who you work with, you may also be able to get design expertise internally, whether that's from them organizing a playtest for you, or at Firestoke, my previous publisher, our scouting team was actually made up of game designers. So after we onboarded a game, they would put on their game designer hat and start giving practical feedback on specific mechanics and features to our developers, which is really helpful, because when you're working in isolation, it can be difficult to see the wood for the trees. Obviously, though, working with a publisher comes with a cost. I don't think that's a secret. I don't think that'll come as a surprise to anybody here. A publisher generally offers publishing services as well as some financial contribution upfront in exchange for distribution and publishing rights of your game. You may have heard the word recoup thrown around a lot. It's a fun word. But say you need £200,000 to finish making your game. You need to pay your artists and your sound designers and your writers. They might agree to contribute that £200,000 over the course of your 12-month development time by milestones. I won't get into milestones because I want to keep your attention. But then there's also production costs. So the cost of getting a porting team to bring it to consoles if you're not doing it yourself, QA, localization, all of that kind of stuff. And then marketing, paying for PR and influencers and adverts and things that can help get your game in front of more people. All of that's contributed by the publisher is called the recoupable amount. And once your game releases, generally the share is split between the publisher and the developer, usually more heavily weighted towards the publisher, although these days everywhere is very different and there are some quite unconventional and good looking models that are coming up. So this is by no means comprehensive. And until that £400,000 recoup is recouped, that's the share you'll be paying. And then after the recoup, generally it moves back to being a lot more heavily weighted in the developer's favor once the publisher has made their money back. There are other things to consider when you're looking at working with a publisher too. Obviously, some publishers have an established audience in particular genres. So if I was looking at finding someone to publish my deep strategy game, I'd be talking to someone like Hooded Horse, because you know that when Hooded Horse brings out a game, I'm going to be playing it for 80 hours. So, the reputation that comes with signing with someone with an established reputation in the industry cannot be overestimated in certain situations. Overall, though, I would say, do you need a publisher? No. No, you don't. Definitely not. All of the things that I've said that you need or that you should really have to bring your game to release, you can get in other places. It doesn't have to be from a publisher. There are consultancies and firms and freelance producers, such as myself, who will be able to join your team for short periods of time to help get you where you need to be. And that way, you're going to have more direct control over the work that's being done if you have the bandwidth to manage that. All of that, though, does come with a cost. That's not a surprise, I'm sure, but there are plenty of options in terms of fundraising. In the UK, we have the UK Games Fund and lots of other grants and funds like that, and some other countries as well. Germany, Denmark, Canada all have excellent government-funded games trust things where they will give you money and you can make games. And I've seen a lot of awesome games coming out of that. And I hope we get to see more countries introducing programs like that in the future, because it's really invaluable, especially for indie developers. One piece of advice I would say, if you decide not to work with a publisher, is get a producer. Obviously, that's another biased opinion from me, the producer who is available for hire, just saying. Producers' jobs, the job of a producer is not to... You're going to be focusing on your game, like on the game itself, on the sprites and the really important fine details. But a producer's job is to get their game out. It's to be a higher level person who can, chart your route through to release. Because ultimately, if you want to release your game, it's a yes or no thing, and you might run out of money before you're able to do it if you don't have someone herding the sheep, spinning the plates in the way that they need it to be herded and spun. Get a producer is my best advice. But do you need a publisher? I don't know. I can't answer that question for you, right? That's a very, very specific individual thing. My advice would be talk it out with your team, consider your options, and decide on mutual goals and priorities. Ultimately, you should be prioritizing. You should be insisting on working with people that share your values and who with you have mutual respect and understanding. For example, if you are staunchly opposed to the use of generative AI in video games, then you should ask a publisher or a consultant or a porting team how they feel about it. Because when something goes wrong or when there's a crisis in the development, and it's not if, again, it's when, you want to make sure that everyone that's working on your game is pulling together in the same direction in the way that you want it to happen. A lot of the publishing horror stories you hear are because people were very excited to work with a team that had a very big name and there was lots of money on the table, but they didn't ask the questions they needed to ask. They didn't make sure They didn't plan for disaster. So talk it out amongst yourselves, figure out what your priorities are. If you want to keep creative control of your game, but you need money, there's a compromise that's going to have to be made there. But it should be a compromise that you're happy with your dev team or just yourself. If it's just you, I don't know, break out the rubber duck. But yeah, before I finish, I'm just going to go over a couple of development tips that I think are evergreen and will hopefully help everybody regardless of the situation they're in. Number one, think big, start small. I imagine there are quite a lot of baby developers in the audience, like people that are new to this, students or thinking about making their first game already partway through it. You shouldn't aim to get everything done with your very first game. Some people do, and that's fantastic, and also probably really terrifying for them. And you notice a lot of those people leave the industry afterwards because they need just a 10-year lie down. But try and only bite off a bit more than you could chew at a time. Like I know that advice falls on deaf ears more often than not because I'm that kind of person too, right? But try and do little by little, because if you want this to be a sustainable and enjoyable hobby or career for you, don't put too much pressure on yourself early doors. There are lots of ways to celebrate successes on a project that are not critical and or commercial success. Next up, build for the big leagues. I have seen so many game pitches come to me when I've been with publishers that look fantastic, and they say this game, our core platform for this game is platform A, and I say, oh great, what's your, how much RAM are you using? 8 gigabytes. Nope. No, it's not going to work because platform A only has 4 gigabytes of usable RAM. And then sometimes, that's nice to find out that early. Sometimes you get midway through the porting process before you realize that, this graphics render is fundamentally incompatible with platform A. And that was our key platform. Publishers are almost always going to see that stuff, figure it out, do their due diligence before making you an offer. So make sure your tech stack doesn't hold you back. Make sure that you've done proper research on everything that you're using, all the plugins that you're using, and that there's nothing that's going to stop you from achieving what you want to achieve with that specific project. Number 3, something very, very close to my heart, accessibility benefits everyone. In the last few years, we've come a long way in terms of being more making our games more accessible, more inclusive for disabled, neurodiverse people. That's fantastic. The importance of that, in my opinion, cannot be overestimated. But we've still got a long way to go. And you'd be surprised at the amount of game pitches I receive or game builds I receive that don't so much as have a volume slider. And obviously, building games to be accessible is important for me, moral reasons, but also if you're hoping your game's going to be a commercial success, then there's really no disadvantage to making sure that more people can play and enjoy your game. More people can feel included in the experience you're crafting. It's one of those things that even people that don't have any, or don't think they have any accessibility needs, you've probably changed your FOV before in game. You've probably adjusted a volume slider, turned off screen shake, maybe remapped some buttons. You've benefited from accessibility controls. So don't wait till the last 6 months of game dev to start thinking about accessibility. Think about it from day one to make sure that everybody that wants to play your game can and have a good time with it. And last but not least, write stuff down. You're all going to hate me for this. Everybody always does. I get it, right? Because GDDs, everybody hates GDDs. Everybody hates making them. Everybody hates updating them. Everybody only updates them when they're applying for funding because they require a GDD and they've got money. So you have to brush it up for the GDD. And I get it. It's annoying to update documentation, especially when you're making a game that's fluid and changing all the time. I get that. I really do. But you know what I don't get? I don't get your game because you didn't write anything down, and now I don't understand how it works. And when it comes time for me to QA it and get the localization team on it, and they're asking me, hey, what gender is this character? Hey, where can I find this collectible? Hey, how do I trigger this achievement? I will go and write it all down, and I will answer those questions. But if you're paying me by the hour, it's going to cost you more money. So write stuff down, please, for your sake and for the sake of everyone that's working with you, and put in a debug menu because yeah, my only notes on that are you will surely not regret putting in a debug menu. Yeah, if you've got an achievement that triggers at the end of the final boss fight and you're getting people to test it on a clean save, Do you want to pay your QA testers to play through the 40 hours of game beforehand? Or do you want to put in a debug menu and have them skip directly to the boss fight? I know what I prefer, but QA teams will take your money either way, as they should. So yeah, put in a debug menu. And that's everything from me today. I don't have time for Q&A, unfortunately, because I am bang on 30 minutes. But you can reach out to me any of these places, Twitter, LinkedIn, email, or find me floating around. I love to talk about indie games, and I would love to hear if you've got any specific questions about the stuff I've covered today. But thank you very much.